Okay. So, I haven't made a video in quite a while. And that's because we moved house. We bought this house. That's why everything is a mess at the minute. It's also why I haven't had a video out. But I've been working on some Chaos Dwarfs, and I'll show you those in a minute. But we got over 500 subscribers now, which is quite a lot for me, I think. I'd never expect to get to that many. But going forward, I'm going to try and get more videos out. At least 2 a month is my goal. So if you like my painting, subscribe. That'd be great. Help me get to 1,000 before 6 months, say. That's not a bad goal. Anyway, let's see some Chaos Dwarfs. And yeah, this is me. So let's do some painting. Okay, so this is what we're going to be working on. I didn't show you in the intro video because I'm pretty new to making intro videos. But these are the Chaos Dwarfs, the new Helsmiths of Hashut. I can't remember what this faction is called. I'll write it on the screen somewhere. Or I'll do a voiceover. That's what it is. But yeah, so we're going to be painting them. We're going to go through all the weapons, the bases, armors, freehand. It's going to be a reasonably long video. I'll try and keep it under half an hour. But yeah, this is what we're going to be working on. So let's get started. All right, as you can see, they're all on corks. This is going to be easier for me to paint them. I did plan on magnetizing all the arms and stuff, but that never came to fruition just because I couldn't be bothered to paint 2 sets of arms. Anyway, I'm gonna prime them all with a grey here. I'm gonna prime the bases just like that with nothing else added to them. I've got a short on the channel on how I did the bases. So if you want to see a longer video on that, let me know down in the comments. I did just prime these guys in black after the grey because I need the armor to be black. And then what I'm doing here is I'm doing like a zenithal with a mix of dark sea blue from AK and black, about 50-50. And I'm hitting them with a zenithal of this. Then what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to go in with just straight dark sea blue on a pure zenithal from the top straight down. Okay, and then we're going to take some of that dark sea blue again, and we're going to do quite a chunky edge highlight on everything. This will show up even though we use the same color for the zenithal with the airbrush, because the paint through the airbrush is less vibrant because it's been thinned down. So this will show, like I said, as a thick, chunky edge highlight. And we're going to do this around everything. Shoulder pads, hat, bottom of his skirt, and the back of his like little butt flap. Then we're going to go in with another edge highlight. This one's going to be much smaller, basically as small as you can get it. You can see I'm just using the edge of the brush here. And this is a mix of dark sea blue and ice yellow. And again, we're going to go around everything here. We're not going to do any of the volumetric highlights that we did on the last step. This is just pure edge highlights, being as neat as we can. So just take your time with this one. And then the last step on the armor is an optional step. We're going to take that same mix of the ice yellow and dark sea blue, and we're just going to thin it down to a glaze consistency, and we're just going to glaze it into some areas where I want there to be a bit more of a highlight. So like the bottom edge of his hat is a good example that I'll show you here. Totally optional, but then this is the armor done. Next up, we're going to be working on the skin, and I'm using a mix here of dark sea blue, Flesh Terror's red contrast paint, and a little bit of ice yellow. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm trying to use a very limited palette on this. You'll see as we go through this that all the skin, the armor, the cloth, everything like that is all these 3 colors really. It's the dark sea blue, the Flesh Terror's red, and the ice yellow. And I'm just mixing them in different combinations to have different effects. So like for the cloth that we'll do a bit later for their sleeves, their under armor, it's just the dark sea blue and the Flesh Terror's red mixed to make it more purple, more blue. What I've done here though is I'm leaning more towards the red. It's going to be more violet, I suppose. No, that would be purple. It's more red anyway. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to layer it onto the flesh. And I'm making sure that I connect the muscles so they're not little individual islands of muscles. And then I'm just going to add more and more ice yellow to it and then highlight up. And that's all I'm going to do with this. Just the footage of me painting the skin any further than that, but this is where we ended up after highlighting up with multiple layers of ice yellow. And I just did this on this guy. He's the only one with his shirt off. The rest of them, it's just their faces. And then I painted their eyes. Everything I did them red with the contrast paint. Okay, now we're going to work on his loincloth. No, like this sash. And we're going to use Avalon Sunset to base coat it. I had to do 2 layers of this, I think, to get it like nice and opaque. And then I'm going to use this medium rust. And what I'm doing with this is I'm going to water it down a lot. And then I'm just going to load my paintbrush up and I'm just going to put it on. And I'm going to let it flood it. And I'm going to let it run into all the recesses. And I'm going to let it stain it all. And I'm going to let it pool at the bottom with gravity. All the things that you've always told not to do with paint. But I am being neat to make sure that I only get it on the yellow and not onto his armor that we've just painted. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back with the Avalon Sunset. And this is watered down maybe 1 to 1. So it's already quite a thin paint. It's thinning it even more. And we're just going to push the paint up to where we want the highlight to be with the paintbrush. Always ending at the point we want the highlight to be at the most. And you can see here, like I said, I'm just pushing it right to the top and trying to leave thickest part of the paint at the top to create this transition from the orange to the yellow. And then once we've done this with the yellow, what I'll do is I'll come back in with some thin down orange paint again, same as we had it before, and I'll push that back down to like glaze and fill to the bottom part of it again. And we'll create this really nice transition from yellow to orange. And you could just leave it at this stage. You've got a nice transition, a nice cloth. If you want to do this on a lot of models quickly, this didn't take very long at all. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take it to the next level and I'm going to mix a bit of ice yellow into the Avalon Sunset. And I'm just going to do the same thing again. I'm going to push it up to the top. And then I'll mix even more Avalon ice yellow into the Avalon Sunset. And I will do another highlight. And then I'll do an edge highlight with that final ice yellow and Avalon Sunset. Just to make it really stand out and make it really punchy with the highlights. Because this is the main color on these models. So we want it to be very vibrant. Okay, then for the sake of completionism, I painted the beards black and then I just mixed a little bit of ice yellow into some black to highlight them up. And then I did a really thin wash of the medium rust over the beards just to give them a little bit of extra color and match the rest of the model. So the next part of the video is going to be mostly me freehanding. I don't really know how to edit it. It's just a lot of footage that I'm going to have to like speed up and put together. So if you want to skip ahead past that part to when I go on to do the rest of the model, that's totally fine. I'll put some timestamps down. But if not, let me leave me a comment, a like. Let me know what you think of the freehand. Let me know what you think of the editing, because I'm pretty bad at this, to be fair. Any tips would be appreciated. Anyway, let's paint a banner. Okay. So the biggest tips that I can give here is just to take your time. I drew a reference image on a piece of paper first. I'll put that on the screen now. I also was copying an image that I found on Google. That'll also put up on the screen. And I was just following these as best as I could. And I had some really thinned down paint. And it was a mixture of, I think, black and ice yellow because it was on my palette. It doesn't matter what the color is as long as it shows up on the thing that you're painting on. And it was really, really, really thin. So it would flow off my paintbrush nicely. And I was doing a lot of backwards and forwards lines, making mistakes, re-going over it. And then eventually what you'll see, if I leave this in, I'm not sure if I will or not. I will, probably, is I made the paint a bit thicker once I'd blocked in most of the outline. I was kind of happy with it. I made the paint a lot thicker, a bit brighter. And I re-went over it again. I redefined the lines that I was doing on this. Now, this video that I made here is about 12 minutes long of me just painting the outline, going backwards and forwards. That's probably a bit longer than it should be because I was doing it on camera, which is always takes a bit extra time. But about 10 minutes to do this, so it's not too bad. And then what I did after that is I just blocked in the colors. Is I just got the colors I wanted. So for the skull, it was like a bone color. I think I used ivory. And then the flames, I just blocked them in with like a dark red. And you'll see that in the next video where I'll go over how I actually colored the freehand. But yeah, take your time, thin your paint, draw some references, use reference images. And these are the top tips. These will all help you do freehand on banners. Then, like I said, I've just blocked the colours in here. I think the red was a mix of the Flesh Terror's red contrast and some of the medium rust. And then I'm going to use medium rust into bright orange. And then eventually I'm going to go into, I think it's an Imperial Fist contrast paint with the yellow. And I'm just going to, basically colouring in is what I'm doing. I'm just colouring in. And then with the ivory, I'm just going to shade it a bit with some sepia tone. And you'll see that in the next clip. And then what I'll do is I'll go back over all the outlines again with black paint, and I'll just redefine the edges. And that'll be it done. It takes a bit of time, a bit of backwards and forwards, but it's not too difficult. Okay, moving on to the sword. And the spears and every weapon, basically. I've painted them all in white, done a couple of layers of white to get nice and solid. And then I'm using that yellow contrast paint. I'm just going to cover the whole thing in the yellow contrast paint. Get a nice, smooth, even layer on it. And the plan after that is we're going to mix some of the yellow with bright orange from AK. And we're kind of having it nice and thin. This is going to kind of be a little bit like water painting. Water painting. Anyway, and we're just going to do it around the edges of the weapon, around the edges of the blade. We're going to go along the central ridge line as well, because we want the center of the weapon to be its hottest. That's going to be the brightest color. And then we're going to move on to just doing pure bright orange. And then we're going to mix a bit of the Flesh Terror's red into the orange and do it again. And eventually we'll get all the way up to a bit of black mixed with Flesh Terror's red. And then right at the very end, we'll do an edge highlight around the whole thing and along the central ridge of just pure black. And it really comes together when you put the dark colors on, because it really shows that brightness in the center of it. This is the same we did for the bases. There is a short on the channel. I'll link it up the top, which is how I did the bases. It's the same colors, the same progression. So the bases and the weapons will match, but they will be a different yellow to the cloth, because I want them to show as different fabrics. That's why I made that choice. We're going to move on to do the metallics next, and then we're done. Okay, onto the metallics. And we painted all of the silver with dark aluminium. And then we used some old Necro Gold. I think it is. It's a Necro Gold. Yeah, decayed metal from scale 75 on all the golden bits. And then we used, I think it's called old gold, to highlight them all. And I put a black wash over all the metallics and then highlighted it from there using chainmail, which is a really old style paint. You could use like Vallejo silver or something like that, mixed in with the old gold and mixed other Necro Gold, and then mixed in with the dark aluminium. You just hide it back up. The footage here is a bit out of focus, which is why I'm just explaining what I did rather than showing you exactly. And then they're all done. I did do a little bit of airbrushing from the bottom up, just as like a little bit of a pseudo glow effect with some of the medium rust. And then I just edge highlighted it all with the bright orange on the bottom. But I'll show you that in the post show with the finished miniatures. So let's get to that now. Okay, we're all done. Yeah, like I said, I did a really quick underspray and edge highlight of some oranges, the medium rust and the bright orange. But that's them done. So if you made it this far, then I guess you owe me a sub and a like, a comment, share. See you.